Do you ever get that feeling? You're just buried under a mountain of information articles, notes, all sorts piled high, and you just wish you could, I don't know, cut through all the noise and really get it, understand something complex.
Oh, absolutely. It's kind of the default setting these days, isn't it?
Mm.
Information everywhere. But what you really want, what we all crave, is that genuine insight.
Yeah.
You know, those moments where it just clicks.
Exactly. And that's really why we're here. We take the stuff you've shared, that stack of sources you want to dive into, and, well, we do the deep dive. Our mission is to pull out the core ideas, the surprising bits, the aha moments hiding in there.
We're sort of your guides, helping you navigate all that detail and see the bigger picture. It's tailored just for you, for what you're curious about.
So today, our deep dive is taking us into Swami Krishnananda's commentary on the Bhagavad Gita. It's quite a source.
It really is. It takes you on this incredible journey, starting with some foundational ideas, then moving into, well, the nature of reality itself, action, the divine. It's deep stuff.
It feels less like just reading a text and more like an exploration. So let's jump in.
Let's do it.
Okay, so first thing, the setting. The Bhagavad Gita kicks off on a battlefield, which, seems like the last place you'd expect a major spiritual teaching.
Right. The commentary even calls it a situation that can be considered as most abominable. It's quite stark.
So why there? Why start amidst all that chaos and potential violence?
Well, I think it's deliberate. It really highlights that these deep truths aren't just for, quiet monasteries. They often have to be found right in the middle of life's biggest messes. The commentary actually says it's like rising from hell to the highest heaven. The teaching comes at a crisis.
So the first chapter, it's really showing the conflicts of human society right there on the battlefield.
Exactly. And it shows how even someone on a spiritual path, like Arjuna, can get completely overwhelmed by emotions and sentiment rather than reason when the pressure is really on. That internal struggle mirrors the external one.
I remember that part where Arjuna asks Krishna to drive the chariot between the armies.
Yeah, and then Krishna just says, quite simply, look at the Kurus.
And that one word, Kurus, just flips a switch for Arjuna.
Because it meant family. Both sides came from the same Kuru dynasty. It instantly brought up all these feelings of kinship, duty, love. Suddenly, the enemy wasn't just an abstract army anymore. His mind made that connection.
Which leads to this really key point in the commentary. Fighting your own mind is more difficult than to fight with people. Why is that inner battle so much tougher?
Well, because the mind is the filter, isn't it? It's what labels someone friend or enemy. Our whole value system in a situation like that, it comes from our psychological reaction, not some objective fact out there.
So it's our own internal state that determines how we see things.
Pretty much. The commentary suggests that if we didn't have some weakness in the mind that makes us susceptible to liking this person and hating that one, the external stuff wouldn't have nearly as much power over us. So that psychological prep work, it's crucial.
Okay, I get that. And the commentary mentions this specific doubt that seekers often have, this fear. Am I deserting the world if I go off seeking God? Am I abandoning suffering people?
Yes, that's a powerful one. And the source warns that a little bit of enlightenment here can actually be dangerous, like a half-baked pot, it says. It can break your resolve, make you feel guilty, pull you back from the path before you've really understood it.
So when the text talks about detachment, it's not literally about, like, packing your bags and heading for the hills.
No, not necessarily. The commentary is quite clear on this. Social detachment isn't about physically leaving. It's about dissociating the mind. The analogy it uses is being on a train. You're with all these strangers, you're in society, but your mind is unconcerned with their specific dramas or judging them. It's the mind, our reactions, that works havoc, not the external world itself. The battle is always inside.
That's a really powerful way to frame it. Okay, so starting with that internal conflict, let's shift gears a bit. Let's talk about the nature of reality itself. The commentary brings up Brahmavidya, the science of the absolute. What exactly is that?
Brahmavidya is basically the knowledge system that tries to grasp the total structure of things. It's not just about looking at one object in isolation. It's about understanding how that object relates to everything else, seeing the whole web, the universal context.
So reality isn't just the individual bits, but the whole interconnected system.
Exactly. And a fundamental insight from this, which the commentary really emphasizes, is that we are essentially consciousness, not just having consciousness, but being it.
An indivisible presence. How does it explain that indivisibility?
It uses the Sankhya school's reasoning, Sankhya being one of those classical Indian philosophies. The logic is, well, if you could divide consciousness, you'd need consciousness between the divided parts to even know they were divided.
Okay. So the very act of perceiving a division implies consciousness is already there everywhere.
Precisely. So it must be indivisible, all-pervading. The commentary calls it a fundamental principle beyond which we cannot go. It's the base layer of reality.
There's that great little story in the commentary, too, the parable of the 10 men crossing the river.
Oh, yeah, the one where they count everyone but forget to count themselves and think someone's missing?
That's the one.
It's a perfect illustration. They created their own worry because they couldn't see the whole picture, which included themselves. The world wasn't the maker of our troubles. Their own limited view was.
And fascinatingly, the commentary links this ancient idea to modern science.
It does. It points out that scientific observations are always conditioned by the instruments you use, even by the observer's own eye. So completely unconditioned knowledge of the world is not possible.
Our perception shapes what we see.
Right. Which again reinforces that the external world isn't solely to blame for our experiences or problems. Our troubles often stem from our conditioned perspective, how our mind frames things.
Okay, that makes sense. Understanding reality and consciousness this way. It leads us straight into karma yoga, doesn't it? That famous teaching from the second chapter.
It does. Karmanyavadikaras te maphaleo kadakana.
Your duty is to act, never to the fruits of action. Which, let's be honest, sounds pretty harsh on first hearing.
It absolutely can. The commentary acknowledges that it sounds like a cruel employer telling a laborer to work hard without expecting any wages. But then it immediately clarifies, God is not a cruel master.
So what's the real principle? What's the insight behind telling us not to care about the results of our actions?
The insight really comes from that interconnectedness we were just talking about. Everyone is involved in the structure of the universe. It's not a bunch of separate actors. The universe is described as one single body.
And we're like limbs of that body.
Sort of, yes. Individuals are like modes of prakriti, matter, energy. But there's this all-pervading consciousness, purusha, animating it all. So your action isn't just your action in isolation. It's a ripple in this huge cosmic organism.
Okay, so because it's this giant organism, the final result isn't purely down to my individual effort.
Exactly. The outcome depends on a big cabinet of forces, countless factors playing out. And ultimately, the commentary says, the will of the Supreme. So focusing all your mental energy and attachment on a result you don't actually fully control, it's just inefficient.
Yeah.
It breeds anxiety.
Your real domain is the action itself, what you do.
That's where your freedom lies. But importantly, the teaching also says, mate sogos fakarmani. Don't be attached to non-action either.
Right. You can't just opt out because you don't control the results.
Nope. Action is necessary. We're part of this dynamic universe. We have to participate. The key is the attitude with which you act, doing your part, without the ego getting tangled up in owning the outcome.
The commentary describes this almost psychological chain reaction when you do get fixated on desire and results.
Yeah, it's quite a stark picture, 2.6263. You contemplate an object. Desire grows. That desire bumps up against reality or other people's desires. Conflict flares into anger. Anger messes with your thinking. Your intellect stops working right. You get bewildered, lose your way, and ultimately you perish in the sense that your higher purpose is lost.
Which is the complete opposite of the description of the realized soul, the sthita prajna, who has this oceanic consciousness.
Right. That person is stable in wisdom. Like the ocean taking in all rivers without being disturbed, 2.70. They are filled with all the values because they're connected to the universal source. They want nothing in a limited grasping sense because they inherently are fullness. And so the commentary says they're the happiest person.
It calls the second chapter the core of the teaching because it brings together the world, God, and the individual.
It really is the foundation. It connects the philosophy, Sankhya, with the practice, yoga, and shows how it all relates to our place in the world and our link to the divine. And this isn't just abstract stuff, it even applies socially. The commentary mentions, in relation to Chapter 3, how mutual sacrifice, cooperation, respect these things create a positive feedback loop, like attracts, like in the cosmic mirror.
Okay, so moving on from that core teaching, as we get deeper into the text, especially around Chapter 7, the divine presence becomes much more central, much more explicit.
Definitely. The commentary talks about how, when things get really tough, insurmountably difficult for humanity, God himself will descend in the form of an incarnation, 4.7-8.
Like Krishna himself in the Gita.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the commentary stresses this isn't just a one-off historical thing. It's a perpetual activity, a descent of divine light into darkness whenever there's a critical need. It speaks to God's ongoing active involvement.
And this God is described as being constantly, incredibly aware.
Profoundly aware. God knows what we are speaking, what we are thinking, what we are feeling, what we are doing. Every little thing.
There's that amazing image it uses.
We cannot touch a flower in the garden without disturbing the stars in heaven. It's just incredible, isn't it? It really hammers home that interconnectedness. There's no such thing as private action in the grand scheme of things. Everything resonates.
Wow. And the commentary says God is a greater necessity than our daily diet, like the breath of life.
Something so fundamental we often forget it's there, sustaining us moment to moment. And this close connection explains karma too. It's not some judge handing out sentences. It's an automatic reaction set up by the cosmic forces based on our actions. The world is like that mirror against smile, and it smiles back. Do harm, and harm reflects back somehow.
You mentioned the tone shifts around Chapter 7. How so?
Well, Krishna starts speaking less as Arjuna's advisor and more directly as the representative of the Almighty, as God himself speaking. The source text makes that quite clear.
So the language changes.
Yes, it becomes much more direct, more devotional. You get phrases like come to me, resort to me, surrender yourself to me. It's a call from the ultimate reality itself.
And the world we normally see, the world of Prakriti nature with its qualities of sattva, rajas, tamas, the commentary says this is like a veil God puts on. Yogamaya.
Yes, exactly. 7.25. It's how the infinite appears to our finite senses. We see the phenomenal world, the actions, the qualities, but this very manifestation, this veil of Yogamaya, hides the underlying absolute reality from view. Everybody cannot see me, Krishna says in the text, because our ordinary vision is limited to Prakriti's show.
This ties right back into conditioned perception, doesn't it? Our senses creating an illusion of, say, 3 dimensions.
Precisely. The commentary mentions modern scientists talking about the world being dimensionless at some fundamental level. The idea here is that the ultimate reality, which the commentary calls the 4-dimensional universal, knows everything in our 3-dimensional experience. But we, stuck in 3D perception, can't easily grasp that higher transcendent source, 7.24, 7.25. Our viewpoint limits our vision of God.
So given that limited view, it makes sense that people would approach God in, well, all sorts of ways. The commentary talks about people with diversified desires, worshiping various things.
Yeah, all sorts of divinities, 7.2 deal, maybe a particular god, or even a stone, a snake, a tree, whatever they associate with getting what they want.
And the commentary says God does grant those wishes, even for a cup of tea.
Apparently so. If that's the sincere focus of your desire in worship, that energy gets a response. But the crucial insight is, you will get only what you want, not more than that. You get the specific, limited thing you asked for, not the infinite reality behind it.
Which is different from understanding God's true higher nature. People might see Krishna just as a human being.
And miss the vastness, 7.24. They don't know his higher nature. The commentary has this beautiful line describing Krishna's form not as just human, but as a concretization and a beaming forth of a resplendence that is all-pervading, like the total whole concentrated into a pinpoint. We often just see the pinpoint.
So to help us see beyond the pinpoint, Chapter 10 gives specific examples of God's manifestations in the world.
Exactly. It's a way to train the mind to see the divine everywhere. The underlying principle is, wherever you see existence, there you see me present as the basic fundamental reality of all. God's glory shines especially bright, the commentary notes, in things showing intense knowledge, intense power. And interestingly, it says mental power is rated higher than physical.
And it lists examples like Vishnu among Adityas, Shankara among Rudras.
Kubera, the lord of wealth, Agni, the fire god, Meru, the mountain, Brihaspati, the preceptor of the gods, Skanda, the general, the ocean itself, 10.21, 10.23, 10.24. These are focal points, places where the absolute shines through with particular brilliance in the relative world.
Okay, this all builds up to Chapter 11, doesn't it? Arjuna's big request. He wants to see this wondrous existence, God's true form, beyond just the descriptions or manifestations.
Yes, he's heard the philosophy, he's felt the presence, but now he asks for that direct vision, 11.2. He wants to see the true existence.
And the commentary describes the impact of this cosmic vision, the Vishvarupa, as just overwhelming for Arjuna.
Completely. He loses his bearings, unable to locate directions, 11.25. He's terrified, but also in ecstasy, babbling almost, seeing all dharma, universal law, perceiving truth, goodness, and beauty, scintillating everywhere.
The commentary pulls out these amazing descriptions from the text. Son of sons, immeasurable, the abode, the support and substratum, guru of all gurus, incomparably great, 11.13, 11.43. It sounds like reality turned up to 11.
Turned up to infinity. And there's that really mind-bending insight the commentary mentions here that events happen first in a fourth-dimensional realm before they show up physically.
Right, like ideas clashing before people fight, or a disease starting inside before you see symptoms.
Exactly, page 406. The cosmic vision gives Arjuna a peek into that deeper causal level, showing that our 3D world is just the end result of processes unfolding in a higher dimension.
And Arjuna's response to seeing this terrifying, awesome reality.
Pure surrender, prostrations. Prostrations.
Yeah.
11.4, just bowing down from all sides. He's totally humbled, even apologizing for thinking of this immense being as just his friend. Page 415.
But then, the commentary notes, God withdraws that form, returns to the charming, beautiful human form to console Arjuna.
A moment of grace, really, bringing it back to a level Arjuna could handle. But the commentary makes a critical point about this vision. It's impossible to behold through ordinary spiritual practices alone, studying Vedas, doing austerities, tapas, charity, dana, rituals, yashna.
11.3.
Why not? Why aren't those enough? Because the means have to match the end. As the commentary puts it, inadequate means cannot suffice for the achievement of an end that is supremely adequate. Seeing the universal requires a fundamental shift in consciousness itself, not just external acts or book learning. The means and the end need to be on a common pedestal. It's a vision so profound, the commentary adds, even the gods are eager to see it.
Wow. Okay, so moving towards the end of the Gita, the commentary tackles life after death in chapter 8. There's that promise. After reaching me, you shall not enter this impure, perishable abode of sorrow.
That's the ultimate liberation, right? Freedom from the whole cycle of birth and death. The commentary uses that analogy. It's like waking up from a dream, page 304. Once you're truly awake to reality, why would you want to go back into the confusing temporary dream world?
But what about those who aren't quite fully realized when they die? The commentary mentions graduated steps, krama mukti.
Yes. For those who've made significant progress but haven't fully merged, there's a path described involving a journey through higher planes, guided by different deities or forces, leading progressively towards the absolute, page 318. It's not instant dissolution, but a guided ascent.
And this is where the commentary emphasizes how the Gita goes beyond some earlier philosophies, like Sankhya. It introduces Purushottam Yoga in chapter 15.
Right. The commentary says the Gita scores a point above the Sankhya here. Sankhya focuses mainly on Purusha, consciousness, and Prakriti, matter. But the Gita talks about Purushottama, the supreme person, who is something above both Purusha and Prakriti, page 510, the ultimate source of both.
And this teaching is called the greatest secret.
Iti Guhyatamai Shastram, 1520, yes. The commentary suggests that truly understanding this makes you wise in the deepest sense. You've done what you wanted to do, known what is to be known, obtained what is to be obtained. It's hitting the ultimate spiritual jackpot, basically.
And the goal is described as entering the very substance of God.
Which sounds amazing, but the commentary adds a crucial condition. It's possible only when you cease to be, meaning your individual ego sense has to devolve, a total abolition of your incrustations of physical and psychical personality.
So if you still feel like you contemplating God as separate,
you're still outside, the commentary says. Real union happens when God takes possession of all things and your existence ceases to be as a separate entity.
That complete merging also breaks karma bandha, the chains of action.
Yes, through sannyasa, renunciation, the desire behind action, and yoga, the practice.
Yeah.
And there's this powerful idea about past sins or mistakes being absolved, not judged and forgiven, but simply becoming irrelevant because we have awakened into the consciousness of the eternal four-dimensional absolute. 9.28, page 345.
Like waking from a dream again. The dream mistakes don't matter once you're awake.
Exactly. Your true nature was never actually bound by them.
Okay, circling back to a theme we touched on earlier, the gunas. Sattva, rajas, tamas. Chapters 14 and 18 really dig into how pervasive they are.
Totally pervasive. The commentary quotes the Gita, saying, "Neither on earth nor in heaven is there anything which is not controlled and conditioned by the three gunas." 18.40. Everything in the manifested world, including our own minds, moods, actions, is a mix of these qualities. Illumination, peace, sattva; activity, passion, rajas; inertia, darkness, tamas.
And the goal isn't to eliminate them, but to understand them and bring sattva to the forefront.
Yes, to cultivate that clarity and peace so your less bound by the push and pull of rajas and tamas, and can eventually transcend all three. The commentary describes the state of the gunatita, one who has transcended them, 14.2125.
What are they like?
Tranquil, svatha established in themselves. They aren't thrown off balance by the guna's play, not ecstatic in pleasure or despairing in pain. They see equal value in, say, gold and a lump of earth, indifferent to praise or blame, treating friends and enemies alike. It's that state of deep inner freedom while still living in the world.
And even things like knowledge and happiness are colored by these gunas.
Absolutely. 18.2022, 18.3738. Sattvic knowledge sees the unity, the one reality in everything. Rajasic knowledge sees only differences, separation. And tamasic knowledge, that's clinging blindly to one small part, like the commentary's example, my baby is everything. It's intense attachment born of ignorance.
And happiness.
Sattvic happiness comes from discipline and self-knowledge. It looks very bitter in the beginning, maybe, but leads to lasting peace. Rajasic happiness is the thrill of the senses, looks like nectar initially, but brings terrible, painful consequences. Tamasic happiness comes from dullness, sleep, delusion.
This makes the commentary's point that work is also religion really practical. How does that work?
It works when you bring God into the picture, page 350. When your work isn't just for ego or profit, but becomes an offering, an impulsion from our own spirit towards your own growth and helping the world, it sacralizes everyday activity.
The commentary also briefly explains the traditional social roles, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Sudra, not as fixed castes, but related to inner qualities.
Yes, linking them to dominant psychic faculties needed for society to function. Intellect and teaching, Brahmana. Will and protection, Kshatriya. Commerce and resourcefulness, Vaishya. Service and action, Sudra, page 586. A psychological interpretation.
And the ultimate state is being established in Brahman, Brahmabhutas.
That's the goal realized. The commentary describes this person as calm and quiet, beyond personal grieving or wanting, seeing all beings equally, equilibrated attitude, utterly centered in God, and loves God and nothing else. 18.5455. It's the natural state when the individual self merges back into the universal.
And who does God consider dearest?
The commentary highlights the teaching, 18.69, that the dearest to God is one who is intently thinking of me and who glorifies me by teaching this wisdom to those who are really devoted.
It's reciprocal.
Seems so. If you make God your dearest focus, God makes you his dearest. It implies a relationship of love.
Even just studying the Gita itself with devotion is considered a form of worship.
Yes. Jnana Yajna, the worship of God through knowledge. 18.70. The act of engaging sincerely with this wisdom is a spiritual practice, but it requires faith. Chapter 17 emphasizes this. Faithless performance is asad, useless, 17.28. Faith is called the action of the soul, incredibly powerful.
Chapter 17 also explains Tat Sat.
As a threefold name for Brahman, the absolute, used to sanctify actions like sacrifice, yajna, charity, dana, and austerity, tapas. Om invokes the highest, tat, that signifies doing it for the absolute without selfish desire. Sat means reality, goodness, auspiciousness, and steadfastness in the practice. 17.2327. It infuses actions with sacred intention.
And just to be clear, Krishna insists that these core practices, yajna, dana, tapas, should not be abandoned. They are purifying 18.5.
Right. But renunciation sannyasa isn't about stopping action altogether. It's about abandoning the desire for personal results attached to the action. 18.2. It's the inner attitude that matters most.
And then right at the very end, after laying out all this incredible wisdom, Krishna tells Arjuna something amazing.
I have told you the secret of all secrets. Consider deeply, and then do what you like. 18.63.
Wow. Ultimate freedom, even then.
Exactly. The choice, the responsibility, ultimately rests with the individual.
The commentary wraps up with that interesting anecdote about Vyasa, Dhritarashtra, and Sanjaya's divine sight.
Yeah, illustrating the difference between the inclusive total God thinking that Sanjaya was granted versus the limited, exclusive human way of thinking that Dhritarashtra couldn't quite step into. Page 611.
And the final thought from the commentary is that grasping the Gita's sheer scope, well, you'd almost need as many heads as the Vishvarupa itself.
It's a good reminder of the depth and breadth of this text, page 613. It really aims to encompass everything.
Phew. Okay, so we've really covered some ground, from Arjuna's crisis on the battlefield, the nature of consciousness, the whole principle of karma yoga, God's presence, the cosmic vision.
Wow.
Then liberation, the gunas, devotion, the Gita as worship itself.
It's a huge landscape within this commentary. And hopefully, this deep dive, using your source, has helped pull out some key threads, some really impactful insights. just for you.
Yeah, definitely. And the message feels like it's not just theoretical stuff. It's about potentially changing how you see things, how you act, your whole connection to reality.
Absolutely. Which brings us to a final thought. The text, as interpreted here, suggests that divine descends at every crucial moment whenever there is an impossible situation. So maybe think about that in your own life. What feels like an impossible situation for you right now? How might viewing it through that lens the possibility of some divine light or insight emerging right there in your struggle, how might that change how you face it?